The moment the U-Haul pulled up, Carol was there, sunglasses perched atop her impeccably highlighted helmet of blonde hair. "Excuse me, but is that monstrosity really where you plan to put your new fence?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass, immediately setting the stage for a suburban war I never asked for. I just wanted to unload boxes, breathe in the fresh, dry August air of my first purchased home, and maybe grill some burgers. But no, Carol, the self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac, had other plans. "Oh wow, hi, I'm Alex," I replied, forcing a smile that felt heavy and fake, trying to ignore the tight knot forming in my stomach. "We haven't even started unpacking the tools yet, but we're just following the original survey stakes. Is there an issue?" She let out a dramatic, shuddering sigh that smelled faintly of expensive, generic department store perfume. "An issue? Darling, your house is practically breathing on my prize-winning petunias. Your foundation is 3 feet closer to my property line than the previous owner's structure. And frankly, it devalues my home. It's an eyesore." "Wait, what?" I thought, blinking at the space between my newly constructed house and her overgrown, sickly-looking fence. The gap seemed perfectly normal, maybe 10 feet wide, so why the sudden drama? The next week was a nightmare of passive-aggressive torture. The incessant grinding sound of her lawnmower starting precisely when I took a business call, the sudden, aggressive shaking of her hedge when I sat on my patio, and the multiple anonymous notes left on my mailbox using Comic Sans, claiming my grass was 1 inch too long, and citing obscure homeowners association bylaws that didn't even apply to our neighborhood. "Can you believe this woman?" I vented to my friend Maya over a lukewarm pizza on the floor of my empty living room, the echo making my voice sound defeated. She actually filed a formal complaint with the city, claiming my builder encroached on her land by 2 feet when they poured the foundation. Maya just shook her head, chewing slowly. "Alex, this is the classic Karen move. She senses a new, easy target, and she's testing the boundaries. You need to lawyer up or at least surveyor up. She's right, isn't she?" The thought of spending thousands just to prove a point was infuriating, but the feeling of being constantly watched, of having every movement scrutinized by those beady eyes behind the tinted living room window, was worse than the money. It was robbing me of the joy of my new home. I took a deep, fortifying breath that hitched slightly. "Okay, fine, 2 can play this game." I hired the most reputable, meticulous land surveyor in the county, Mr. Jenkins, an old guy with a grizzled beard and a permanent squint, who looked like he'd seen every piece of suburban nonsense imaginable. When he came out, Carol was ready. She stood sentinel by her fence, arms crossed over a pristine white linen top, barking instructions to Mr. Jenkins about where he should be looking and pointing furiously at a cracked piece of asphalt. "See that line, surveyor? That is the true boundary. It has been for 30 years. He needs to tear down that monstrous fence and move his house back." I could feel the blood draining from my face. Was it possible I missed something? Was this whole expensive, beautiful mistake actually my fault? Mr. Jenkins, bless his heart, simply tipped his cap, ignoring her entirely, and meticulously set up his archaic-looking equipment. The little whirring sounds of the laser distance meter the only thing cutting through the deafening tension. I stepped back, leaned against the rough brick of my house, the heat radiating through my shirt, and watched, my chest tight, waiting for the verdict that would either save my investment or plunge me into legal hell. Took him 3 hours. 3 agonizing hours of measuring, cross-referencing old plat maps with GPS coordinates, and marking new, crisp lines with bright orange paint. Carol was getting more agitated, pacing and humming a tuneless, annoying melody. Finally, Mr. Jenkins walked over to me, holding a rolled-up, official-looking document, his face expressionless. "Well, son," he drawled, his voice deep and gravelly, "I have some news for you and some very bad news for your neighbor." My heart slammed against my ribs. "Wait, what's the twist?" I leaned in, unable to speak, my mouth suddenly dry. He tapped the map. "Your builder? They were actually a half-inch inside your legal boundary. Perfectly compliant. You're good." I let out a sound that was half sigh, half relieved sob, but then he continued, "However," and this is where the real cinematic moment hit, "Carol's property line, according to the official county records from 1985, is actually 4.5 feet further away from the road than her existing fence. Her structure, that decorative stone fence she's so proud of, is not only encroaching on your line by 2 inches, but the entire length of it is sitting firmly inside the public utility and sidewalk easement. I watched as Mr. Jenkins calmly explained this to Carol, who immediately went from self-righteous queen to screeching fury. "Are you telling me I have to move it? This fence has been here for 15 years. This is ridiculous. I'm calling the city. You're incompetent." "Oh honey, you already did." The poetic justice was so sweet, I could practically taste the sugar on my tongue. Her escalation, the side twist I hadn't seen coming, had not only cleared my name but had weaponized her own complaint against herself. The final, devastating blow came 2 days later when Mr. Henderson, the city code enforcement officer Carol herself had contacted, showed up. He wasn't wearing a uniform, just a polo shirt, but the clipboard in his hand looked heavier than a judge's gavel. He listened patiently as Carol, red-faced and trembling, waved her hands dramatically, insisting on some ancient squatter's rights to the land, citing neighborhood gossip as legal precedent. Mr. Henderson simply looked at the orange survey markers, looked at the city plat map, and looked at the proximity of her stone fence to the newly installed city fire hydrant. He cleared his throat, the small sound echoing in the unnatural silence, and delivered the verdict that sealed her fate, the words hanging in the air like smoke. "Ma'am, based on your complaint, we conducted a full review. Mr. Jenkins' survey is accurate. The city requires the immediate removal of any structure encroaching upon the public easement. You have 30 days to move your entire fence, Miss Carroll. If you fail to comply, the city will remove it and bill you for the demolition, which means essentially you have to move your fence 4.5 feet into what you currently believe is your lawn, or risk us moving it into the actual street." The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. Carol's face, which had been contorted in rage, suddenly went blank, then crumpled, realizing the full, agonizing cost and public humiliation of her own entitlement. She had tried to prove my house was too close, and now her boundary had shrunk, proving that sometimes, when you dig a pit for your neighbor, you end up tumbling into a much deeper one yourself. Mr. Henderson turned to me, offering a quick, knowing nod, a silent acknowledgement of the drama we had both just survived. As he drove off, I walked over to the new, true property line, kicked a little dirt over one of the bright orange markers, and took the deepest, most satisfying breath I'd taken all year. The sun felt warmer, the air smelled cleaner, and the message was clear. Don't let the noise of entitlement drown out the quiet certainty of your truth. When you stand your ground, justice has a funny way of making the bullies move theirs.